Well, hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me again. Glad to have you here. So I have been reading this newish book by James Lacatski and Com Kellerer, and it also credits George Knapp, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. And this is a very interesting book because for the first time we have someone who was involved with AAWSAP before the AATIP program existed with Lou Elizondo, and that program we know about. But someone came forward to talk about AAWSAP, and there's a number of interesting things about it. So in this first video, I want to cover what he said was going on with Bigelow Aerospace and the AAWSAP program, which was Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program. Now, Lacatski says right off the bat that this was the program that was responsible for asking for all those so-called DIRDs, the DIRDS, Defense Intelligence Research Documents, something like that. The ones that Hal Puthoff talked about at the 2018 IRVA SSE meeting. And apparently that didn't come from AATIP, it came from AAWSAP. Lacatski says that the AATIP name was just a way of covering AAWSAP initially, before AATIP was its own program in the Pentagon. So if you're confused about these names, you're not alone. This was deliberately done to obfuscate, to keep the program away from bureaucrats and people that try to steal your budget, apparently, in the Pentagon and so forth. There's a way to hide the program, and calling it that was a way to hide what it really is. Now, despite what we've heard from Susan Go at the Defense Department many times, that these programs were designed for looking into foreign intelligence, aerospace, technological innovations, Lacatski says right off the bat, this is not what this was about. He says right at the beginning, I'm just going to paraphrase, I tweeted the quote, it was a UFO program. He calls it UFO from the beginning. AAWSAP was a UFO program that branched out into looking at paranormal connections to UFOs, and it seems from the book they definitely got what they were asking for. They partnered up with Bigelow Aerospace, who he says Bigelow has put more private money into the UFO subject than anyone else he knows, Robert Bigelow. And they went out to Skinwalker Ranch after Bigelow had purchased it to investigate these reports of bizarre creatures, as he calls them, quote unquote, cryptids, things that, animals that seem to defy what modern science tells us is real. And we're talking about things like Dogman, a creature that sort of looks like a human, walks on two legs, but also looks like a wolf or a dog, 6 or 7 feet high. And he says that the program was also devoted not only to the anomalies at Skinwalker, but, and we'll get to that in a subsequent video, but on investigating metamaterials from UFO crashes. He's just quite upfront about this. Now, he does credit that New York Times article from 2017 as having brought all this forward. And you remember in that article, in the article from 2017 New York Times by Leslie Kean and Blumenthal and others, they talked about a special building being built at Bigelow Aerospace in North Las Vegas to house these special UFO materials. Now, these materials were considered so important that they initially created a SCIF within this special building designed for AAWSAP, a secure compartmentalized information facility, SCIF, where classified activities take place and conversations and things that are classified, I guess, top secret and above. But they couldn't quite make it work, so they made the whole building into a SCIF. It was, it passed the SCIF protocols. And a former Twitter subscriber sent me a paper about what the requirements are for these SCIFs. They're quite rigorous to make sure that no one can hear what's going on inside. They're electromagnetically shielded, they're sealed for sound and so forth. So he said quite explicitly in the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book, that this building existed at Bigelow Aerospace. Now you remember, I made this video right after Hal Puthoff's talk to us at SSE IRVA in June of 2018 in Las Vegas. We went up to Bigelow Aerospace and I talked about it. And I mentioned having asked this question 3 times to various people on our tour of Bigelow Aerospace, which at the time specialized in space crew compartments. Nothing that would be classified, as far as I know, just civilian space crew capsules, which were interesting. They showed us how they were designed, how people would live in them and stay up there in orbit around the Earth for an extended period of time. They're inflatable because they take less weight in space. In a spacecraft, you launch them and then you inflate them in space. So if you remember, I asked a security guard on the bus coming into the facility, as they asked us to put our cameras away, are there any facilities that are related to extraterrestrial craft? And his response was, quite seriously, there's some buildings here that even I'm not allowed to go into, which I thought was quite telling. I mean, here's a security guard, an armed security guard. Buildings he can't go into sounds sort of classified to me. So I followed up with 2 of our tour guides, employees that work at Bigelow Aerospace at the time. One of them said, we don't comment on what's in the media. And then the second guy I asked just made fun of the question and said, oh, the ET materials, they're all around you. So I was kind of perplexed. I mean, here we are in 2018, a year after, 7 months after the New York Times article. And we're a group of, it's the SSE group. I mean, we're researchers, scientists, people like that, PhDs, people that are interested in this. And still, we're not being told during the tour about this building, even though it had been in the New York Times, something that really did exist. Now, on my way out, I asked someone that would know about this, who was there on the tour. I said to this person, I asked the tour guides, and they just made fun of my question or said no comment. And this person looked me in the eye and said, I've been in the building, and walked away. Okay? So the building really did exist. Lacatski confirms that. And what I make of this is this subject must be so serious that even after it comes out in the paper, and the program has been canceled for 8 years at that point, because it ended in 2010, according to Lacatski. They didn't get any more funding. They tried, but they couldn't swing it. No one wanted to kind of be involved with such a weird topic, and they couldn't get any more funding for it. But 8 years after the program is finished, a year after it's recognized that it came out of the news that this building existed, even those of us who visited Bigelow Aerospace, were told that it was sort of a non-topic because it had been classified, or maybe it still is classified, maybe it's still active. I don't know. It's just interesting to think about how potentially serious this topic is, that no one can even admit to the existence of the building. We weren't asking to go in the building. We were just asking if it was real, like the New York Times had reported. And I couldn't get a straight answer. I got different answers from everyone I asked, which I think is just very interesting. It shows us this is a deadly serious topic. At least that's how the U.S. government sees it. It must be real, or they wouldn't be denying it. After all, if there was no building, they just would have said, no such building exists. But that's not what they said. So it shows us, basically, here we are in 2021. We've got a long way to go on this topic of finding out what's going on for the benefit of everybody, because we're not going to make scientific progress unless we have conversations about the UFO topic, the extraterrestrial angle on it, the implications of materials. Yes, they obviously have defense significance, but it's a lot bigger than that. It has implications for how we live and our role in the universe. And obviously, as Luella Elizondo has mentioned recently, it has legal implications of who had access to these alleged extraterrestrial materials, who didn't have access. Was that fair? Is it okay just to give it to some aerospace companies and not others? It's classified, so the other aerospace companies can't find it. I think this raises a lot of questions all around the board. It's just a huge topic. I don't think you can overestimate the significance. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that. Very interesting that the building has been confirmed. It was for AAWSAP, and that's all it was for. And it was heavily classified, and we still can't find out much about it beyond what Lacatski tells us. Okay, I'm always curious to hear what you think. Put your comments in the box below. Thanks again. We'll see you in the next video. Take care for now, and bye.